but you wanted to make it so that I can let people in, remember?
Yes. Okay, you're the host.
Okay. I saw that the church at large is doing prayers until the election, kind of doing a novena.
Mm. Yes. Yeah.
Someone is watching on YouTube.
Yes. Yeah, you know, I think they can hear us actually as we talk. So we'll try and keep silence. I will start in a minute. Hello, welcome to part 3 of our course, Keeping It Together When It's Breaking Apart. And you'll remember, if you have been to either of the first 2 sessions, that the goal of this short 4-week course is to help us all as we approach the election, and then for 1 week afterwards, in what is a really, really troubling and divisive time, where we are polarized and tribal, where finding middle ground and commonality is very difficult, and where emotions are running particularly high. So the goal has been to try and help us all approach next Tuesday, and just as importantly, what comes after next Tuesday. Just to recap, last week we looked at the subject of how it is that people form their political opinions, and the shocking and unfortunate news was that it's not often through rational thought. It isn't usually through collecting evidence and information and making a detached, rational, informed decision about what to believe. It's usually a much more emotional thing. And because it's emotional, it goes tied in with all sorts of other feelings about security and belonging and identity, which is why it's particularly hard to have a reasonable conversation with people and persuade them to to consider your view and even try and persuade them that your view is correct. So we discovered then that when trying to influence a friend about political beliefs, rational argument is of limited use. Fact checking is of practically no use, and Facebook posts are of absolutely no use. So let's move to tonight's topic. And we're going to begin by looking at the concept of truth. Because truth is not as true as it used to be. Here are some quotes from some people over the last few years. Sir Robert Armstrong was head of the British Civil Service, and there was a big scandal in the mid-80s in which a senior civil servant blew the whistle on a government cover-up. The government issued a report, and Sir Robert Armstrong went on the news and said this about the report: "It contains a misleading impression, not a lie. It was being economical with the truth." And that phrase, economical with the truth, became a very famous phrase in British culture. Not a lie, just economical with the truth. Bill Clinton, famously in his impeachment, said, "It depends on what the meaning of is." So can you see something developing here? The art in politics of not giving an outright lie, but intending to say something that is misleading nonetheless. And as Christians and as people who are concerned about ethics and morality, it's a legitimate area for us to say, well, wait a minute, if you're intending to mislead someone, even if you're not telling a barefaced lie, is that actually okay? Or is that as immoral and unethical as just telling a whopper? Just to balance things, if I mention a Democrat, I'll mention a Republican as well. So here's Kellyanne Conway from 3 years ago. Our press secretary gave alternative facts to that, which has also passed into common usage. And the satirists and late night talk show hosts, are very into mocking that phrase, alternative facts. The Financial Times summed it up rather well. Words are complex signs whose meaning always depends on context. And that really makes them quite slippery. And a skilled tactician, armed with plenty of words, can make them say pretty much what she or he wants them to say. Context, the FT reminds us, is crucial to understanding what someone is saying. Here's God. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. The ninth commandment. Simple enough, isn't it? Well, actually, it's not actually as simple. Notice this commandment does not say you shall not lie, just you shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. In other words, this is a relational thing, and it's about the welfare of your neighbor. Okay, so this kind of opens the door to, you know, if you have like Anne Frank hiding in your attic, and you know a Nazi officer knocks on your door and says, "Have you got Anne Frank hiding in your attic?" You know, you might think, "Oh well, the Bible says I shouldn't lie, so I'll have to say yes." But actually, if you're not going to give a false testimony against your neighbor, then it's okay to say, "No, Anne Frank is not in my attic," because it's about your neighbor. It's about putting Anne Frank's safety at your as a priority. Here's Jesus. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Lies do not set people free. And he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. In other words, the personification of honesty, the personification of truth. Not I speak the truth, but I am the truth. And that, for a Christian, puts the whole thing on a completely different level. You know, when we seek to mislead, we are actually, in a way, denouncing the nature of Christ. And so, in a sense, you could say we're even kind of blaspheming when we intentionally set out to say something that is not true. And our patron Paul sums it up really well, I think, in just 5 little words. Speak the truth in love, all right? That doesn't mean, you know, we sledgehammer people with the truth. It means that, you know, we speak the truth in love. Love doesn't seek to hurt. Now, here's something I love. The editorial board of the Oxford English Dictionary. After much discussion, debate, and research, the Oxford Dictionary's word of the year 2016 is post-truth. Post-truth is an adjective defined as relating to or denoting circumstances in which objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and personal belief. Did you get that? Basically, post-truth, which, you know, we kind of invented as a society in 2016, and which the OED embraced and put in the dictionary in that year, is statements which do not appeal to people's rational, logical evaluation of what is right and what is wrong. It's purely about what appeals to your emotions and what lines up with your personal beliefs. In that sense, truth is no longer a thing. It doesn't really matter very much. It's rather like this. In the good old days, politicians really did try to make an attempt to not tell outright lies. And that's where, you know, all the kind of giving misleading impressions without using the words that are untrue. You know, that's the whole thing. That's Robert Armstrong in 1986 and Bill Clinton in 1998. And it's what, you know, conventional politicians used to do. So yes, politicians did lie, but they usually only did it when their careers or their marriages were at stake. You know, you think of Clinton, you know, lying to the investigation into you know, the Lewinsky affair, and you know, he told a flat out, direct lie. But the stakes, looking at it from his perspective, were really pretty high. You know, he could lose his job and he could lose his wife. The rest of the time, politicians, when the stakes are not so high, will try to like fudge the issue, change the subject, polish it with grease, and try to give a misleading impression without actually lying. So that was the old world. That was the pre-21st century world, when we all accepted there was such a thing as truth. Now, that's not the case. The concept of truth is so invalid almost that politicians can just make stuff up, in an ad hoc interview or a campaign rally or something. Just ad lib nonsense. And the question of, is this factually true, it isn't even a question that's asked by the speaker. The speaker will just make stuff up, and if the speaker just repeats it enough, then whether it's true or not isn't actually the point. The followers of that speaker will accept it as true because they said it and they kept on saying it, month after month. So that's where we are now. Morality has been removed from public speech. Here we are.
Excuse me 1 minute.
Yeah.
People are having trouble joining.
I'm sorry.
The passcode's not working.
You got in on it, did you? Okay, sorry, I'm going to have to stop sharing the screen and just see what I can do here. All right, the passcode is 370228. The meeting ID is 859-1110-3383.
So I'll share that in the chat window again?
Yeah. Thanks, Jerry. Sorry about that, everyone. So here we are then in this post-truth era, where you can say pretty much whatever you like, there'll always be a vast number of people who will believe you, even if it's false what you're saying. And this is a demoralizing thing. I mean, I think about this, and it's this is just really disheartening. The state that we are in regarding public truth telling. And so it begs the question of, how did we get here? And I'm trying to advance the slide. Here we go. Okay, postmodernism. This is a philosophical movement which was which arose in the second half of the 20th century, and it was a reaction to modernism or modernity. So the old, Enlightenment scientific worldview that there are such things as facts, there is an overarching story that holds the world, that holds the universe together. There were things that everybody agreed with, and science and good history and good reporting. There were facts that everybody agreed with. In the second half of the 20th century, though, there was a reaction to that. People looked at science and scientists and thought, well, they're the people who gave us the atom bomb. What good is that? Isn't my experience as valid as what has been accepted as the truth? So things became quite subjective, and there was a reaction against dogmatic thinking, which scientists can be very dogmatic, just as dogmatic as religious people. So this movement influenced many disciplines of human activity. So art is one. That picture I've got in the top corner there. I don't know what that is. I think it's Jackson Pollock, but I'm not sure. But that would be some postmodernist art. There are no rules. There is no overarching narrative about this is what art is. It's a representation of a real object, which is what it had been up till this point. And now art is whatever I say it is. And if I want to splash paint on a canvas, and call it art, then that's my truth. Now, I'm not knocking this, because actually this opened up many good things. For example, in the American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, the DSM, the manual that psychologists use to say what is a mental illness or not, until 1973, that said that homosexuality was a mental illness. And that's the science. People who have, got PhDs and done research, and this is what they've said, and this is in the DSM. The second edition in 1973 removed that homosexuality as being a mental condition. So postmodernism, yeah, we can say, well, everything just went crazy. We all disagreed on what truth was. Truth was no more. But at the same time, one of the positive things is people's experience became a source of authority. So it doesn't really matter what scientists would say at the time. If somebody has an orientation to people of their same gender, well, it's all very well a scientist saying that's an illness. For the people concerned, that's reality. That's normality. Just as normal as anybody else. So postmodernism was a double-edged sword. There were good things about it and bad things about it. And the good thing is, everybody can claim the authority of their experience, and no one's experience is invalid. I'm sorry about this. There is no other way of saying this. This is actually a philosophical, academic phrase that people do actually use to define a certain thing. And it's all about politicians who have a powerful story and speak it courageously. So the credibility of a politician does not rest on their telling the truth or giving accurate representations of the world. Where they get their authority from is the lived experiences of the people who follow them. So the politician who claims to be, very, understanding of people's poverty or their victimhood or their bad circumstances, even if that person doesn't actually share those, that will in itself be a source of authority. So such folk invoke compelling narratives to play into people's fears and insecurities. And they present it in a way which conventional politicians are horrified by, but their followers say, well, this person says it like it is. She or he is a straight shooter, and that's, so whatever they say must be true. A third factor is information overload. As I was researching this, I was really intrigued to discover that the first phenomenon of something factual being questioned publicly and accepted by many people as being true was deniers of the Holocaust. So, somebody, presumably, or a small group of people, not long after the Second World War, began this conspiracy theory that the Holocaust did not happen. And the digital revolution made sure that lie spread quickly and convincingly around the world. So now, the number of people who believe that the Holocaust never happened, that is actually a sizable and kind of terrifying number of people. So just as we've seen in the first 2 weeks, the digital revolution takes, a false view, a false idea, and gives it legs, and a turbocharged engine. And finally, this thing called populism, which is which is a phenomenon that has turned up in very many places around the world. I think of the country where I lived for the first 40 years of my life, and that populism in the shape of the Brexit campaign and a myth of what it meant to be British, became very powerful, to the point where against all of the major parties, Conservative, Labour, Liberal Democrat, all of them said, don't do Brexit, don't do Brexit. And yet the majority of the population, disobeyed their own parties and voted for it. So for populism to work, there has to be a growing discontent among the masses with the status quo, and the collapse of public trust in the political establishment and the dominant institutions. Post 2008, the crash in 2008 and the Great Recession, a lot of the trustworthiness of institutions disappeared. You didn't trust Wall Street anymore, the banks, the whole capitalist setup, the growing gap between rich and poor. And so we became kind of ready right around the world for some populism. There was a shared resentment and sense of suffering by among the masses in Europe and in all the Western world. So that's kind of how I see, how we got to this place where we, we're in this post-truth society. Now let's get personal, bring it right down to today, particularly to next Tuesday. And I've got some challenges for you that we can actually do together now. I would like you, if you consider yourself to be on the left politically, you might call yourself a liberal. I would like you to try to put yourself into the shoes of a conservative, somebody on the right end of the political spectrum. And the other way around, if you think of yourself as being on the right, a conservative, I want you to put yourself in the shoes of someone on the left, a liberal. And because what we don't do, and this is both the solution to the problem and also why it's so difficult, we don't sit and listen to each other. There just isn't that culture. The level of mistrust and suspicion is so deep that we no longer meet in the same places. We meet in our own social media bubbles or our own 24-hour news channel bubbles, and we simply don't encounter people from the other tribe. So we don't get to listen to their fears and their needs. If you think, for example, that Black Lives Matter is a symbol of hate, have you actually sat down and listened, not talked, just listened to a Black person talking about their experience of being Black in America? If you have not, I think you need to do that before you can say Black Lives Matter is a symbol of hate. If you think that Trump supporters are uneducated white nationalists motivated by bigotry and resentment, go to South Jersey, go into a diner, sit down next to somebody and listen to their fears and their loves. Listen to what their passions are. Listen to their hearts. My take on the 2016 general election was that Clinton lost the moment she called half of Trump's supporters, quote, a basket of deplorables. That was it. That to me, that was in September. But that was the moment that she lost the election, because it exhibited a chronic and painful lack of will to consider the fears, the needs, the passions, the interests, the lives of people who found the populism of Mr. Trump very attractive, and thinking that he was gonna speak for them. I'm not commenting on whether he has or not. I'm just saying that that's what in 2016 that was the thinking. So again, if you find if you're on the right, find an Antifa supporter and listen to her. If you're on the left, find a Boogaloo boy and listen to him. Hands up if you're not feeling slightly uncomfortable right now, because I am. Okay, let's get, again, really practical here. What happens if your candidate loses on Tuesday? How are you going to prepare for that? How are you going to keep from being devastated? It's a question that I have been thinking about for my own self. And a couple of things I did, actually. I journal each day. And one day last week, I journaled on the question of how will my life be better if the other candidate wins? Which is not a question I had considered before. And I did actually come up with a few answers, which makes me think, well, actually, that person is not the disaster that maybe I think he is. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. And if you can find one or two things about the other candidate's program that you can say, yeah, actually, to be honest, that guy's ideas on that issue are better than my guys, then good. That's a strong, positive, healthy thing to do. Another day last week, as I journaled, I asked myself the question, how will my life be unchanged if my candidate loses? And I came up with a pretty good list, actually. So I wake up Wednesday morning, my candidate has lost. God will still be crazy about me. My wife will still love me for who I am. I will still have close and loving relationships with my children. I will still have a stimulating and fulfilling job. I will still have the privilege of being involved in people's lives as the leader and pastor of our community. I will still have a comfortable lifestyle. I will still be fit and healthy. In other words, only the important things won't change. So why do I get so bent out of shape when I consider my candidate might lose? The really important stuff for me, the stuff that makes my life worth living, none of that's going to change. Okay, let's get even more uncomfortable, shall we? Why would a Christian vote for the other tribe? Keyword here, Christian. And I've thought about this. I put myself in the two camps and come up with some reasons why Christians might vote for each of the two tribes. So here we go. What's so good about the left? The left believes in equal opportunity to access essential resources, all right? Essential resources like work, education, healthcare, food, shelter, self-determination, equal opportunity to access all of that. The left believes in the equal treatment of all people under the law. So regardless of your sex, race, zip code, sexual orientation, or age, there should be equal treatment. Now, these are great things, aren't they? If you're on the right, I hope you can agree that this is good sort of Christian stuff. People on the left tend to be oriented towards peaceful resolution of international problems. They're not all pacifists. Many on the left are actually, pretty into war. But generally, there's an orientation to try every other means first. Internationalism, which is not experiencing a happy period of time at the moment, but this idea that we're all in this together. We can partner with people around the world, and their problems are partly our problems as well, and we should be helping each other. Cooperation, not competition. People on the left believe in narrowing the gap between rich and poor, locally and globally. And they tend to believe in the stewardship of creation. It belongs to God, and poor management of it leads to human suffering. Now, if you are on the right and you struggle with people on the left, look at each of those 6 things and acknowledge that, as a Christian, I can pretty much say amen to all of that. And those are the things that motivate Christians on the left. It's not that they, like murdering babies and hate people who are rich and want everybody to be totally equal in everything. This is Christian reasoning for why someone should choose to be on the left of American politics. And let's do it for the right as well. People on the right, Christians on the right, tend to believe in the sanctity of human life from conception to natural death. Okay, so this is not just abortion; it's also euthanasia and allowing people to die with dignity, with their pain controlled, but allow that to take its natural course, rather than a doctor saying, okay, I'm going to administer something to you with the intention of you dying. So the sanctity of human life from conception to natural death is a very Catholic view, and one which as Episcopalians we share, actually, and it's certainly there in Scripture. People on the right tend to believe in the free movement of goods, services, capital, and labor. Okay, now let me say this, this left and right, this does not necessarily equate to today's Democratic Party and today's Republican Party, because there are plenty of people in each that don't go along with what I just said about the left and what I'm now saying about the right. Today's Republican Party has moved away from this second point, particularly on the free movement of labor in terms of immigration. That's miles away from where Ronald Reagan and George Bush were. The classical right-wing politics, the free movement of goods, services, capital, and labor are king. And clearly that's a Christian concept, I believe. People on the right tend to believe in law and order. Again, if you're on the left, you can't argue with this. This is, law and order is good. It's Christian, it's biblical. People on the right tend to believe in the institutions and traditions and norms of, that we have found to be trustworthy over time. It's why we as Episcopalians, have liturgy, because over, 2,000 years, we've come to trust that this is the truth, and repeating it and trusting it is a very good thing. And people on the right politically tend to believe in the value and the truth of our history, our institutions, our traditions. The Constitution is often mentioned in that. They tend to be patriotic, which again is not a bad thing. I would, though, make a distinction between patriotism and nationalism. Patriotism is being proud of one's country, being glad that you are a citizen of your particular country. It means, waving your flag at the Olympics. But that's different from nationalism, which tends to say that, we're the best. And everybody else, the way they do things, their culture, their understanding of democracy, that's inferior to ours. One of those is Christian and the other is not, and you know which is which. So it's rather like, the person who says, my spouse is the greatest cook in the world. Now, they don't really mean my spouse is the greatest cook in the world. Compare my spouse to, 5 Michelin star chefs, in Manhattan. My spouse is not the greatest cook in the world, but I'm patriotic in that statement. The person who actually believes that, they would be the nationalist. It's saying that, my country's great, is patriotic. My country is the greatest. That's nationalism. And people on the right tend to have a strong private morality and faith, which clearly is a wonderful thing. So if you're on the left, look at those things. And again, you cannot deny that those are good and Christian concepts. So if someone on the right, if someone's voting for right-wing candidates next week, don't, if you're on the left, just assume it's because they're evil and they hate immigrants and they they think the gap between the rich and the poor is a grand thing. There's Christian thinking behind both wings of our politics, a basic theological framework that God loves all people equally, but those on the left think that the state has to have a robust role in ensuring that, and those on the right think that the state should not have a large role in securing that, but that somehow the invisible hand of God will work when everyone uses their individual freedom. Drawing to a close, let me just read to you. No, actually, let me show you a picture first. This will encourage you. This is the Mitchell family and the Gates family, and they live in Mount Lebanon, which is a suburb of Pittsburgh. The Mitchells on the left there, it's pretty clear who they're voting for. And the Gateses next door, it's clear who they're voting for. And there at the bottom picture are the two houses. Those signs say, we heart them, and pointing to the other family. I can't quite work out what that says. One love, I think it says, written inside the hearts. This was in the Wall Street Journal, and I think this is really kind of touching, really. I mean, it shows that it's possible that here are families on either side of the spectrum and either side of a piece of grass, and they're saying we love them next door. Let me finish tonight's session with this story of Hands Across the Hills. After the 2016 election, as the US experienced a wildly polarized political landscape, a solidly Democratic group from Massachusetts decided they wanted to build a great big bridge in Trump country. They contacted a civic group in a small coal mining region of eastern Kentucky and asked if they could develop a relationship. When the Kentuckians were first contacted by the liberals, they recall being taken aback. They thought the Massachusetts group was intent on educating or changing them. But the Kentucky community was relieved to understand the East Coasters didn't want to change them, but to see them. They embraced the goal, stated on their website, of meeting face-to-face with others who voted differently from us. The groups began to make spaces for discussing different economic, environmental, social, and political concerns. Overcoming many odds, the participants of the Hands Across the Hills project have built a remarkable bond. These two communities have chosen to model innovative ways to engage impasse and transform conflict. After doing the hard work of creating resilient relationships, they have gained the momentum to collaborate on common issues in meaningful ways. If you want more on that, I can send you some information. Okay, I'll come off screen share, and if there's anybody there in real life in Zoom who has something to contribute, please go ahead. Is it just Gail? You're muted, Gail. Okay, you're on.
Okay. I think one of the basic things between left and right is the concept of individualism versus the concept of the common good. I think those two things sum up two entirely different views of life. That's my comment.
Very good. But can we say that each is a legitimate, proper, decent Christian philosophy?
As long as they don't go too extreme.
Sorry?
As long as they're in moderation.
Yeah. That's not to say that, you don't think that one is more accurate than the other in terms of, how God created people, but they both have legitimacy.
Well, it comes down to your feeling of your role in society and the way you look at the world as to whether it's for an individual or whether it's for the common good. And to me, that's a big difference.
Right. Thank you. Okay. I can't see any comments on YouTube. So if that's all, we can call it a day for today. Thank you for being here and for listening. Next week, we will not be meeting. I thought it was best to have a little bit of a breather because this time next week, perspective might be in short supply and in the right frame of mind to kind of tackle the fourth topic. But the fourth topic is going to be, okay, so let's actually practically do something about this. And so we'll be looking at some models of how to overcome conflict and build peaceful relationships. So do come back in 2 weeks' time. And Jerry, do you want to mention something about next Wednesday?
Yeah, so we're going to have a post-election vigil through the Diocese of New Jersey, and I will make sure that link gets in the weekly newsletter. When I go offline now, I'll send that to the secretary. And also, the Episcopal Church is doing some prayers for the election right now too. So if you go on the diocese website, you can see that. And I'll share that link with the secretary as well.
All right. Lovely. All right. Thanks very much, everybody. See you soon.
Good night.
Good night.
Right.
Thank you.